Hello, I'm Rod Peppiatt from the Avenue Uniting Church in Blackburn in Victoria. We meet on the lands of the Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation. Today I'm in my study because it's raining very heavily and on the roof in the church building, and I couldn't hear myself think. Today our church is entering into the next few weeks, with lots of other churches around the place, of the season of creation. And I've chosen to call my reflection wisdom, with a capital W, reflecting on the life-giving, the energy, the wisdom of God present in the midst of all creative processes in our world and our cosmos. I'm taking up a reading from Proverbs, one of the books of the Old Testament, Proverbs chapter 8. And I'll explain a little bit further about that as I go. But for now, wisdom. Does not wisdom call, says the proverb writer, and does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights, beside the way, at the crossroads she takes her stand, beside the gates in front of the town, at the entrance of the portals she cries out, "To you, O people, I call, and my cry is to all that live. Simple ones, learn prudence. Acquire intelligence, you who lack it. Hear, for I will speak noble things, and from my lips will come what is right. For my mouth will utter truth. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are righteous. There is nothing twisted or crooked in them. They are all straight to one who understands, and right to those who find knowledge. Take my instruction instead of silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than jewels, and all that you may desire cannot compare with her." Does not wisdom call? And does not understanding raise her voice? Wisdom, when we use it, needs a big W. Not the one in the shopping centre. I'm talking about wisdom in the context of our Old Testament, and particularly in the context of our reading from Proverbs. And I think it needs a big, as in capital, W. Why is that? Well, to remind us that in much of our faith inheritance, wisdom is a great deal more than simply being wise, as important as it is. That is that, but it's more than that too. In our traditions, wisdom is a driving force in the creation of the entire cosmos, and is its life force, its continuing life. She is, in other words, the creative energy, the creative spirit in the world. And for me, that deserves a capital W. To be more accurate though, it should be a big S for Sophia. That's the name given to the wisdom traditions in the Hebrew scriptures, particularly in the Greek language. It's a feminine name and a feminine image, woman wisdom. It spoke from within the people's traditions and experiences of birth, of creative power, of renewing life and intimate connection as they saw it between creator and created. Now, I think we lost a fair bit in our heritage that was precious when the Sophia traditions within Judaism were overtaken by the influence of Greek philosophy in early Christianity. With that influence came a new distinction and distance between earthly and heavenly. And I think that's an issue. The image we see in our passage from Proverbs 8 and elsewhere is poetic and it's magnificent. And in it we gain a sense of how the people understood and experienced the Sophia traditions to be at the centre of who they were as a people of God. Those connections and relationships that we have largely lost or ignored, particularly in the Western Christian strands, are real, deep and raw. Without them, we've somehow managed to see the rest of creation as separate from us, perhaps even from God. We've isolated cosmos, the world, cosmic, from the God, Spirit, that is so precious to us. As Proverbs 8 continues, we see such statements as, "Ages ago I was set up at the first, before the beginning of the earth. Or when there were no depths, I was brought forth." Or again, when God made firm the skies above, I was there when she drew a circle on the face of the deep. Now we do well, I think, to remember that this is poetry rather than a documentary account of creation, and to hear it that way, so that when we hear the power of it, wisdom was there, I've always been there. Other proverbs go even further in declaring wisdom as the energy through which the universe, the cosmos, has come into being. Proverbs 3, for instance, sings of wisdom as the partner, the power, the guiding principle even within creation. I'm not a biblical literalist. I believe that creation took much longer than 7 days and is an ongoing process. I believe that our planet is much older than 6,000 years. It's billions of years. And that creation is an ongoing process, not a one-off event. So I read these words as poetry and image and wonderful myth, way too big to be constrained by mere facts, and way bigger than arguments over how historically accurate they are or not. I read them that way because I believe that's how they were written. And when I do so, I sense the wisdom of the holy come alive all over again in a way that our world desperately needs to hear. One note before I go on. When I use myth, I don't use it in the sense that it tends to be used a lot now, which is something that's false. As I said, myths are stories. They are legends that aren't bound up in our notions of did they happen that way or not. Wisdom is calling. Wisdom is calling us to pay attention to the energy that spoke, to the passion that still speaks, bringing life into being. Calling us to pay attention to the fact that creation is not us, it's not other, it's us as well. It's calling us as people of sacrament to remember, to honour and practice the sacrament which came before all others, the world, the universe. Calling us as people of faith to hear the cries of the planet as the cries of the creative process. The energy, the spirit we know as God. Now, I said earlier that wisdom is more than simply being wise, more than simply understanding, and I stand by that. But at the same time, I don't want us to ignore being wise. I think that's desperately needed as well in the understanding and the way that we use it. Being wise, being smart, listening. I think those things are desperately needed as well. And I think the two ways of thinking about wisdom are inextricably linked. It's wisdom that does pay attention to what's happening around us and that is willing to hear, even when hearing is uncomfortable. It's wisdom that recognises a need to change the way we go about living in this world. It's wisdom that discovers and recognises our biases and our blind spots and finds the courage to go beyond them. It's the kind of wisdom that just a few years ago we talked about in a young Swedish woman who describes her Asperger's syndrome as a superpower, using to try and convince anyone that would listen. I don't know whether Greta Thunberg identifies as a person of faith, and it doesn't matter to me. But when I hear her, I hear something that sounds awfully like wisdom, with a capital W. As I do when I hear people like Matthew Fox, a great Christian scholar, say crazy, wonderful things like this. There are more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on the earth. How can that not make us wonder? Or when he says things like this. When Jesus said, love your neighbour, do we really think it only means the two-legged ones who live next door? Is not the air our neighbour, the water, the earth itself, the universe? Or this, if we've forgotten the sacredness of water, try going without it for 3 days. Wisdom is crying out. I don't believe that's in question. Understanding is raising her voice. On the heights, beside the way, at the crossroads she takes her stand. Beside the gates in front of the town, at the entrance to the portals, she cries out, to you people I call, and my cry is to all that lives. What I believe is in question is this. Who's listening? Are we? In the name of the Holy One in whom we live and move and have our being. Amen. Blessings.